COVID-19 cases across the world, and it seems that COVID-19 has overtaken all other diseases and progressing rapidly towards the third wave. Now we are in the second wave. It is affecting kids and children also. Means age is no bar for the COVID-19, which was very unlikely in the first wave. So COVID-19 in pediatrics is the topic for today's lecture. To enlighten us on this topic, we have a very renowned, soft-speaking and eminent pediatrician, Dr. Sanjay Mankar sir, is with us. Welcome, sir, in the session. Actually, sir is very familiar to us and doesn't need any kind of introduction. Still, I will go briefly through his academics. Sir has done MBBS and DCH from BJ Medical College, DNB from Bharati Vidyapeeth Medical College. He has fellowship in pediatric infectious diseases from Bharati Vidyapeeth Medical College. Ex-secretary IAP Pune during the year 2012-13. His areas of interest is in pediatric dermatology and infectious diseases. At present, professor at Bharati Vidyapeeth Medical College with vast teaching experience of 25 years. He is pediatric infectious disease consultant at Bharati Hospital and Research Center, panel consultant at Dinanath Mangeshkar Hospital, and practicing as pediatrician at his own Mankar Hospital at Siagar Road. With this brief introduction, I request Dr. Sanjay Mankar sir to deliver his speech. Over to you, sir. Please proceed.
Okay, can you hear me all?
Sir. Yes, sir, loud and clear.
Yeah. Okay. I just start sharing my screen. Okay, Mansi madam, can you see my screen properly?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, good afternoon to all of you. First, at the outset, I would like to thank Pune Doctors Association and Mukta Foundation, especially Mahajan sir, Mansi Pahade madam, and Sagar Mande sir for the invite. As you all are aware, since the pandemic of coronavirus has started in the December 2019, all parents are worried about their kids, whether my baby is going to be affected, whether there is any specific treatment. So a lot of questions were there in mind. They were slightly relaxed and they were not much worried initially because during the pandemic, the number of pediatric population was less affected as well as it was less severely affected. So when the first wave occurred, out of all affected people, only 5% population was a pediatric population, and out of all affected pediatric population, %1 were severely ill or critically well. So this was the statistics which was there in the first wave. Then there was a relaxed period of 3 to 4 months, and then virus underwent mutation. So there was a UK variant, there was a Brazilian variant, there was a South African variant, and the virus once underwent mutation. Again, the second wave occurred. The currently circulating strain which is there at present in the Maharashtra is a double mutant strain. It is highly contagious. It's spreading like anything. So Lancet has confirmed the airborne transmission, for which the first transmission initially was supposed to be a droplet transmission. That's why it is affecting almost all the family members together. So one family member becomes positive, almost every family member is becoming positive. So it's a highly spreadable virus. Young population is getting affected more frequently. The age group 30 to 45 is more affected. Most of them are getting severely ill. Few of them are dying immediately after 3 to 4 days of the onset of the fever. So it is highly contagious and causing a lot of dyspnea, discomfort, ARDS like picture. So all this is there in the second wave. In the second wave, the pediatric population, which was 5% affected in the first wave, has now affected almost to 15 to 20%. And instead of 80% becoming asymptomatic in the first wave, almost most of them are now becoming symptomatic. And the number of ill patients, moderately ill and severely ill, are now also increasing. In the first wave, most of the pediatric patients used to get infection from their adults, but now it is seen that most of the adults are getting the infection from the pediatric age group, and now the pediatric population has become the super spreaders, and they are acting as a threat for the infection for the adults. Now the scientists are predicting that the third wave is likely to come, and in that the pediatrics population is more likely to be affected, since this is the age group which is going to be escaped from the vaccination part. So we have to be prepared for the third wave as well, especially for the pediatric population. For physicians like you and me, it is a challenging to suspect COVID, because most of the viral infections will have a similar kind of clinical presentation as like a COVID. So when we see this 1 year to 10 year population, most of the COVID will be coming to you with a fever. The fever was present in almost 46% of the patients. The fever may be very low grade, lasting for 3 to 4 days, or sometimes prolonged fever is also noticed. Sometimes biphasic fever is also noticed. Sometimes with chills, high grade fever. So a lot of variation. It's not that easy to detect from the fever whether it is COVID or not. Cough is a symptom which is commonly seen in adults, less frequently seen in the pediatric age group, but still it is commonly seen in adolescent. It was seen in a 37% of the patient. It was dry, irritating cough. Sore throat, which was more commonly seen in adults, less commonly seen in the pediatric age group, but we see more commonly what we see in day-to-day practice is a erythema, or redness of throat is more common than just a sore throat. When the second wave occurred, the loose motions were the common feature, and few of the pediatric population just present with the loose motion. We think that this can be just a rotavirus diarrhea, but their COVID test used to come positive. So loose motions can be the chief complaint in pediatric population. Sometimes the loose motions are entirely watery diarrhea, and presence of blood in stool speaks against the diagnosis of the coronavirus infection. Myalgia, severe weakness, very common in adult population, slightly rare or less common in a pediatric population, while nausea, vomiting and abdominal complaints are very common in the pediatric population. Abdominal pain is very common in a pediatric population. Most of the COVID patients are coming with a fever, vomiting, abdominal pain. Abdominal pain sometimes is so severe that we think that this may turn out to be appendicitis, but later on, once you do the COVID test, you come to know that this is COVID and nothing else, but not appendicitis or not any else. So abdominal pain is also one of the commonest feature. Rhinorrhea, less common. It is more common feature of influenza rather than COVID-19, but still less than 1 year children are showing this rhinorrhea very common. Loss of taste and smell, which is very common with the adults. It is less common. The pediatric population are not going to tell about the loss of taste and smell. Dermatological manifestation, which I have commonly seen, is the urticaria. Most of the pediatric patients will be presenting with a high grade fever and urticaria with the COVID positive. They are also presenting with a maculopapular erythematous rash, which is resembling measles and misdiagnosed as measles or any other viral infection. And the third kind of rash is a livedo reticularis rash, which is also commonly seen in a pediatric population. Dyspnea, of course, more common in adults, is also seen in the pediatric age group. The bronchiolitis picture is also seen in the pediatric age group. But the dyspnea which is occurring, so a child will be presenting with a fever of just 1 or 2 days duration. The child becomes afebrile for 4 to 5 days, and then suddenly the dyspnea starts. So once the dyspnea starts after 6 to 7 days, this is highly suggestive of a COVID infection. Headache is again common in the adolescent age group and above 6 to 7 year of age group. That is also seen in a pediatric COVID patient. So what we are worried mainly, and the mother is always worried about, is a neonatal and infant. So that is less than 1 year population. In less than 1 year population, most of them are having mild disease and have a better outcome. The mortality is less, but still the mortality is being reported from this age group also. They commonly come to you, that especially neonates will come to you with the feeding difficulties, refusal of feeds, not taking feeds, they are vomiting. So that's the major complaint. Fever without focus is one of the commonest presentation of COVID in these days. Minimal respiratory symptom, that is distress, cough, all may be seen in this age group. While the cough is a very less prominent feature, cough is almost not seen in the neonates and infants. So the cough is a less prominent feature in a less than 1 year old child. Rarely severe disease requiring mechanical ventilation is also reported even in neonates as well as in infants. The infants may come to you with a severe bronchiolitis, that is just a fever of 1 or 2 days and then marked wheezing requiring hospitalization, oxygen therapy, etc. Multisystemic inflammatory syndrome, which is associated with coronavirus, is also reported even in infants. They do present like a Kawasaki-like presentation. So that's a well-known fact to have a multisystemic inflammatory syndrome in the children less than 1 year old. So this is regarding clinical presentation occurring at the various age group. The adolescent may present differently slightly. They may behave like adults, but unusual presentations and complications are not very rare in any pediatric age group. So unusual presentation and complications which we commonly seen in our hospital practice is one, ARDS, like in adults. So ARDS going into respiratory failure requiring oxygen of all means, requiring ventilation, are pretty common. Cardiac involvement do occur with the coronavirus involvement. We have seen myocarditis as the most commonest involvement. Myocarditis leading to cardiac failure requiring dopamine, dobutamine support is also known. Arrhythmias also very common with the cardiac involvement. And shock, the shock-like presentation is common with multisystemic inflammatory syndrome associated with coronavirus. So the child may come to you with a high-grade fever of 3-4 days and then suddenly collapsing. His heart rate may show various tachycardia, low volume pulse, and suddenly low blood pressure and requiring cardiac support. So that's cardiac involvement is also common. Coagulation defects, thromboembolic phenomenon, though common in adults, is also noticed in a pediatric age group, and even HLH-like presentation are common with pediatric age group. The neurological complication or sometimes neurological unusual presentations are common in the pediatric age group. These presentations just include, like just they may come to you with the fever and encephalopathy, they may come to you with the fever and convulsions, they may come to you in the status epilepticus. Sometimes adults like stroke can be seen, or sometimes Guillain-Barré syndrome, GBS like presentation, transverse myelitis like presentation has been reported with, or even ataxia has been reported as a neurological complication or a presentation of COVID-19. The secondary bacterial infections are not very common in office practice, OPD practice. They are not common. They are common only in hospitalized patients. They are common in a ventilated patients. They are common in a patients who remain in ICU for a prolonged time. As in adults, you get a secondary bacterial infection, secondary bacterial pneumonia with ESBL, E. coli, or Klebsiella. They are common. In adults, you get a mucormycosis. They are slightly rare in the pediatric age group. And the last very important complication, that is multisystemic inflammatory syndrome associated with COVID-19. We are going to see in detail about this. Now, the major problems occurs to the physician whom to test all this. So the test should be done for the all COVID suspect cases, and all household contacts of the COVID patient. The testing is also required prior to any procedure or prior to hospitalization, because you cannot hospitalize COVID patients with the other patients. So it is always mandatory to do a COVID testing before hospitalizing any child or doing any procedure or any surgery. It's better to do that. Now, which test? Normally, everybody is aware that the gold standard for detecting the COVID infection is a RT-PCR. The RT-PCR sensitivity is around 50 to 60% with the very good swab testing. The other test which will be helpful with the for the diagnosis is a rapid antigen detection test. Since the RT-PCR takes a longer time, since all the labs are burdened nowadays due to the overcrowding, they may take around 2 or 3 days sometime for the RT-PCR test to come positive or negative. But the rapid antigen test will take only 15 minutes. So it will help us to triage the patient whether to admit in a COVID ward or a non-COVID ward. The COVID antibody tests are not useful in direct diagnosis of the recent COVID infection, but they are useful in a diagnosis of multisystemic inflammatory syndrome, which is associated with coronavirus, because MIS is routinely a post-COVID, and these antibodies come positive only after the 14 to 15. Normally we get these IgM antibodies which start coming positive after 5 to 7 days, while IgG antibody takes more than 7 days to come positive, and IgA antibodies, they are highly specific for COVID, but they are not available with all kits. So we take a help of either IgM or IgG antibodies, and when the disease duration is longer, the antibody titer which helps is the IgG titer, which will be helpful. Another use of this COVID antibodies is for epidemiological purpose. It will help to how many population is being affected because of the COVID. The lab parameters, they are useful in triaging the child as well as to know whether this child is going to have a severe COVID or not. These lab parameters should not be done in all mild symptomatic patients. They are not useful in them, but you can take the help of them. It may show lymphopenia. So hemogram may show lymphopenia, and absolute lymphocytic count less than 1000 is highly suggestive of a severe disease. So lymphopenia is very important. Thrombocytopenia can occur in an earlier course of disease, and we are seeing nowadays thrombocytopenia occurring even on 2nd or 3rd day of the fever, and you need to rule out the dengue in such situation. Elevated liver enzymes, that is SGPT and SGOT, are also may be helpful in some scenarios. Increased CRP and ESR and all other inflammatory markers like ferritin, D-dimer, interleukins may be helpful, especially when you are tackling a child with multisystemic inflammatory syndrome as well as the child with the cytokine storm. These interleukin 1 and 6 will be helpful in many cytokine storm, and increased CPK levels also sometimes may be helpful. Now, when in nowadays, most of the adults will be suffering from COVID-19, and the physician will be doing their CT scan right on a day 1 or day 2. So most of the time they present to us, they will come with a CT scan, but CT scan is absolutely not mandatory in a pediatric age group. It gives lots of radiation. So the CT scan will be helpful only whenever there is a severe COVID infection suspect. So the child's RT-PCR is negative, but still he is a severe COVID. So he has got a pneumonia, probably he has a hypoxia, and you are thinking that this is COVID only, but the COVID test is negative. In that case, the ground glass opacities may be helpful. So this is only for severe COVID infection, not for the mild COVID infection. Actually, sick child with the breathlessness, where the need to determine, so you want to put the child in a COVID ICU or whether you want to put the child in a normal ICU, that can be determined over here. And non-severe COVID patient, to know the cause of deterioration. So the child has deteriorated, so you have to find out whether it is a progression of the COVID disease or whether it is a secondary bacterial infection which has occurred, or any other kind of a diagnosis is there. So CT scan in child is not at all useful in asymptomatic child. So if the child is asymptomatic and even COVID positive or COVID negative, don't try to do a CT scan. It will not help you, but it will give a lot of radiation. Mild disease also, it is not helpful. The child with the prolonged fever without lower respiratory tract involvement in a COVID positive patient, this is also not indicated. So when you see any child with the COVID, the first step in the management is you have to try the patient whether this is a mild COVID infection, whether it is a moderate COVID infection, whether it is really a severe COVID infection, or whether the child is critically ill. So these are the four categories of the COVID infection. So we call the COVID infection as mild when the child has got only fever, sore throat, rhinorrhea, cough. So mild symptoms are there, and absolutely important is no fast breathing. So no fast breathing puts the child into mild disease. And remember, 80% of all children will fall into this mild disease only. Moderate disease. So when the child has got a tachypnea and he has got a age-based fast breathing, so that if the neonate is there less than 2 months with the respiratory rate more than 60, infants respiratory rate more than 50, and above 1 year if the respiratory rate more than 40 is suggestive of pneumonia, then you put them in the moderate category with the SpO2 remaining in between 90 to 94, and there are no signs of any severe disease. We call it as a moderate disease. The child is said to be severely ill because of the COVID when the child has a pneumonia with SpO2 less than 90%. He has increased respiratory efforts. He has intercostal, subcostal retractions. He is either grunting, Marathit kadne म्हणतो आपण त्याला, severe retractions, lethargy, seizures, and excessive sleep, which is there, or a severe diarrhea, vomiting, severe dehydration, abdominal pain accounts warrants it's a severe disease. The child is said to be critical when he has a white lungs, that is ARDS like picture. He is severely hypoxic, requiring mechanical ventilation. The child is in a shock because of either MIS or severe disease. Multi-organ dysfunction syndrome, if it is there, so kidneys involved, liver involved, brain involved, everything is involved. We call it a multi-organ system. Or acute thrombosis and MIS, we call it as a critical disease. So first step in the management of the child is to know whether the child is mildly ill, moderately ill, or whether he is severely ill. So we move on to a management of asymptomatic COVID child. So remember, asymptomatic COVID child, no intervention at all is required. No role of any investigation. No, don't do even hemogram. Don't do any other investigation. No need of CT scan, CT thorax also. Isolation with the parents is absolutely important. You have to make him home quarantine for 14 days and with the parents only. This word is important, with the parents. Don't send them somewhere else. So it is with parents. Watch for the development of the symptoms like fever, tachypnea, hypoxia, monitor SpO2. So that's what is a management of asymptomatic, no investigations. So we have here first case, the 5 months old baby who had got only running nose. Mother is tested COVID positive 3 days back, but she is asymptomatic. Father is symptomatic and he is also COVID positive. So mother and father are COVID positive. Now the question is, will you test this baby? So truly speaking, if you consider the guidelines, you need to test the baby. But in clinical practice, we don't test this baby. We consider this baby as COVID positive only, and we don't test them. Does baby need any other investigation? Since we have already said for mildly symptomatic, we don't do any investigation in this baby. What is the treatment of this baby? The treatment is only symptomatic. I personally will not give any treatment for this baby. running nose. For that, you may give some antihistaminic, that's all, and monitor whether he develops any tachypnea, whether he develops any fever, he develops any rash or a persistent fever. Now, the most important question is whether he should be isolated with his parents, because both the mother and father are COVID positive and the baby is only mildly symptomatic. He is not tested. So the natural, this thing is the mother and father will send them to the grandparents. But this is a their grandparents, because the grandparents will be at the risk of the COVID. So it should not be done. This should be isolated only with the parents. Okay, so what is the management of the mild COVID infection? So symptomatic treatment only in form of paracetamol. Don't try to use ibuprofen or mefenamic acid. Ibuprofen may in fact aggravate the symptoms. Mefenamic acid we should not use because the renal parameters may be deranged. So preferred drug is a paracetamol. It may take longer time for the fever to come down. If the child has got a cough and cold, you can use decongestants or antitussives. There is no role of any investigations like CBC, CRP, D-dimer, CT chest, absolutely contraindicated in the child with a mild COVID infection. Monitoring of the temperature, saturation, and appearance of any new symptoms should be reported. Absolutely, there is no role of azithromycin, doxycycline, ivermectin, favipiravir, or even hydroxychloroquine. So nowadays what happens is most of the families, all the families are positive and adults are taking this medicine, that is azithromycin. Almost all the adults are taking azithromycin, doxycycline, ivermectin. Few of them who are affording class, they are taking favipiravir also and hydroxychloroquine. So 5-6 drugs they are taking, and when the child comes to us, we tell them that no medicine is required for them. So probably they think that this doctor doesn't know anything, so they just laugh on us. But if you see any journals, there is no role of azithromycin, doxycycline, ivermectin, favipiravir in pediatric practice. There is no established role of zinc, multivitamin, and even vitamin C and D. There is no established role, but since if you don't give, the parents themselves take, almost everybody takes multivitamin, and if you don't give, again they will think that this doctor doesn't know anything. So I also do give this zinc, multivitamin, and vitamin D, but there is no established role of all this. But try to avoid hypervitaminosis. So if you give vitamin D in excess or vitamin, they can cause problems. So try to avoid hypervitaminosis. Yes, immunocompromised children with the mild disease require special attention. So all these who are on cancer chemotherapy, those who are having prolonged steroids, those who are HIV positive with the severe less CD4 count, they require hospitalization even with the mild disease. They require CT, they require early remdesivir, and they may require early convalescent plasma also to treat them. So this category is entirely different, and they should be hospitalized as early as possible for observation and further management in even mild COVID disease. Now, this is a very common scenario nowadays, and we are facing in day-to-day practice, the child with the prolonged fever. So those who are having more than 5 days fever, the parents are really very panicked. Either the baby is either COVID positive or he may be COVID negative. These people definitely require investigation in form of hemogram, C-reactive protein, D-dimer, SGPT, SGOT. They also require chest X-ray and renal function test to know. Those who are COVID positive, COVID negative, they also require urine examination and other tests like dengue tests, blood culture tests to rule out enteric fever and other cause of fever. So sometimes it happens that the child has got a prolonged fever and you are thinking only on terms of COVID-19, and it turns out to be just UTI. It may turn out to be dengue fever or a rickettsial fever. So it is important to rule out other causes when the child has got a prolonged fever for more than 5 days. CT scan absolutely not needed in this child unless and until they have a very severe respiratory complaints. Close monitoring is what is required. All of them may not require hospitalization, but close monitoring even in the families is required. The role of steroids in this child, they should not receive steroid in first 7 days at least, because if you give steroid in first 7 days, the viral replication may increase and the disease may be prolonged. There is no role of antibiotics at all if the child shows that this is only likely to be a viral infection. If you are suspecting secondary bacterial infection, then only think of giving antibiotics. No role in first 7 days. Regarding neonatal COVID, so neonates can acquire infection from mother, either the transplacental transfer, though transplacental transfer is rare, it has been reported. Intrapartum during delivery is also reported, and most of these neonatal COVID are postpartum acquired from mother or other caretakers. So neonatal COVID do occur in all 3 ways. The COVID can infect in pregnancy, the first trimester infection with very high fever and very severe infection, whether it causes birth defects, like suppose we have a rubella, where if we have CMV infection, you may have a birth defects in a newborn, but whether COVID give rise to birth defect, this is not yet been reported. We don't know about whether the COVID in the first trimester is going to cause. So the disease is so young, we know very little about the COVID now. As the time evolves, our knowledge will be updated. So at present, we don't know whether it gives rise to birth defects or not. Pregnancy increases the risk of severe COVID infection and can lead to premature births or stillbirths. Newborn COVID, the newborn should never be separated from the mother unless the mother requires hospitalization or newborn is too ill, so requires hospitalization. So mother should be always be with the baby, and the breastfeeding should be continued. The separation should be considered whenever the mother is too ill requiring hospitalization, or very low birth weight babies requiring premature care, or any underlying medical condition of the baby like congenital heart disease or any other congenital problem requiring NICU stay. So this is the plan of the pregnant woman who is suspected to have a COVID-19. All infection control measures should be taken in delivery. If the child is asymptomatic, he can be either COVID positive or COVID negative. In both the situation, the baby should remain with the mother and the baby should be monitored for the development of any new complaints or signs of tachypnea. Okay, so this should be done for the next 14 days. If the baby is symptomatic, he can be either COVID positive or COVID negative. In both the situation, again he requires NICU care. He will be given express breast milk if he is accepting, and all other management will be done according to COVID protocol of the unit. Coming to the management of the severe COVID infection, I will not waste much time on this because all these kids are going to be managed by the intensivists. They require admission in a critical care unit. They require extensive investigation in form of hemogram, urine, CRP, D-dimer, chest X-ray, liver function test, blood culture to rule out other infection, procalcitonin to rule out the bacterial infections, interleukin-6, ferritin, and LDH if available. You have to maintain their saturation with the oxygen therapy, whatever the means available, either with the mask, rebreathing mask, HFNC, or high frequency nasal cannulas, or you may require NIV or ventilation. So whatever the means, you have to keep the oxygen saturation above 92. The role of steroid is very important over here. If the child is going into the cytokine storm, or if he's showing the signs of early distress and hypoxia, the drug of choice is either dexamethasone 0.15 milligram per kg per dose, or methylprednisolone 1 to 2 milligram per kg dose per dose is given. There is a lot of controversy about the remdesivir, whether it works or not, but the recent journals and various recent published trials suggest that remdesivir do works, and it's the only current antiviral drug recommended by FDA for the treatment of the COVID-19 infection. So they help in reducing the duration of the illness as well as the severity of the illness. So remdesivir can be given in a pediatric age group in a loading dose of 5 milligram per kg on a day 1, followed by a maintenance dose of 2.5 milligram per kg for 4 days, with the very severe COVID infection not improving even after giving a 5 days of the remdesivir therapy. 10 days of the remdesivir therapy can be considered. But before doing that, it is mandated to rule out there are no renal problems and no hepatic problems, because if the renal problems and hepatic problems are there, you cannot give remdesivir. Antibiotics in the first few days, that is in the first 7 days, the antibiotics are totally not needed because none of the antibiotics are antiviral and they are not going to act on the COVID infection. They are helpful in the second week of the illness when the child is hospitalized. The initial antibiotic therapy may be either amoxiclavulinic acid or a ceftriaxone. But if the child is seriously ill and he is on ventilators and we suspect a secondary bacterial infection either because of gram-negative infections or staphylococcal infection, then in that case, either vancomycin or piperacillin tazobactam or even meropenem may be the helpful antibiotics, but routinely they are not given. They are required only for severely ill hospitalized patient requiring ventilation. Tocilizumab, which is a immune modulation drug, is given rarely in a pediatric age group. It is done only on case-to-case basis. It is not for routine patients. The dose of the tocilizumab is 4 to 8 milligram per kg. We have given up till now only single doses, no 2 doses are given. We have given these in a selective cases of multisystemic inflammatory syndrome, which are not responding to the routine line of treatment of IV, IG and methylprednisolone. We have given this tocilizumab. Tocilizumab causes severe immune suppression. So you have to give only if the procalcitonin is negative after ruling out all the bacterial infection. Otherwise, the child will die because of the serious secondary bacterial infection. So tocilizumab should be given only after confirming that there is a no bacterial infection and the child is in a cytokine storm, that is his interleukin 6, ferritin and everything, all inflammatory parameters are very high. Low molecular weight heparin is routinely given in a severe cases to avoid thrombosis, especially when the D-dimer level are very high, especially above 1000. Convalescent plasma is routinely not given in a pediatric age group. They will be given to only very sick babies, especially those who are having comorbidities and immunosuppressed children. Especially it has to be given in first 7 days after the onset of the fever, because if you give later on, the antibodies which are forming due to own immunity may be suppressed. So it should not be given after the 7 days of the onset of the symptoms. Other drugs like anakinra, which is again a immunomodulator drug which suppresses the interleukin formation, is currently not recommended and not available at present in India. So now we move on to something known as MIS. So here is a case who is 7-year-old boy who has presented with fever of 5 days duration, rash on the body, abdominal pain, severe abdominal pain and vomiting. He is highly febrile, sick looking, temperature 103. He has got tachycardia, tachypnea, respiratory rate is 40, blood pressure is on the lower side. There is a lot of conjunctival ingestion. There are cracked and red lips, oral mucosa and tongue also looks very red. Liver is 3 centimeter enlarged below the costal margin, and this is the child. We can see his eyes are looking red. his lips are cracked and looking red, and he has a generalized erythematous maculopapular rash on the body. His HB is 10, he has WBC count which is increased with the lymphopenia. I told you ki if the lymphopenia, absolute lymphocyte count less than 1000 is highly suggestive of severe disease. Thrombocytopenia, high ESR, high CRP, high ferritin, high T dimers. X-ray chest is absolutely normal, so no respiratory involvement. 2D echo was done in such child, shows decreased diastolic function, and pro-BNP very high, suggestive of cardiac involvement. So this is a classical child who has presented with high fever and increased inflammatory markers. And if you do their corona antibodies, the COVID antibodies are likely to come positive. So this is a classical MIS. So that is multisystemic inflammatory syndrome associated with COVID-19. And the WHO has given a very good definition when to call it is a multisystemic inflammatory syndrome. So MIS can be diagnosed only in child who is up to 19 years old with a fever more than 3 days duration. So both the criteria, you cannot diagnose them in adults. You can diagnose only whenever the fever is there for more than 3 days duration. The second criteria is there has to be either rash or bilateral non-purulent. This word is important, non-purulent conjunctivitis and mucocutaneous inflammation signs, that is oral mucosa is looking red, cracked lips are there. The child is in hypotension or shock, and the features of the myocardial dysfunction in form of either pericarditis, valvulitis, dilated coronary arteries, and elevated troponin or pro-BNP. So these are very important features. Evidence of coagulopathy in form of prolonged prothrombin time or PTT or elevated T dimers, and acute gastrointestinal symptoms like diarrhea, vomiting, abdominal pain. Along with this, if there is increased ESR, CRP or procalcitonin, that is inflammatory markers are there, we call it as a MIS. Another feature is important, no obvious bacterial cause of inflammation. So the child with staphylococcal or streptococcal toxic shock syndrome may have a similar kind of presentation. So you have to send a blood culture and rule out there is no bacterial infection or a shock as a cause of sepsis. And last most important, elevated levels of antibodies, or sometimes you may get COVID-19 RT-PCR positive or rapid antigen test positive, but most of the time it is a serology. So the IgG antibodies are strongly positive in most of the cases. In almost 10 to 20% cases, RT-PCR or even rapid antigen and even serology may turn out to be negative, and it turns out to be only a clinical diagnosis. So how will you manage this child with MIS, that is multisystemic inflammatory syndrome? So whenever it is a mild disease, we manage with only IV methylprednisolone 1 to 2 milligram per kg per day, or along with aspirin, that is 3 to 5 milligram per kg per day for the period of 4 weeks. If there is no response in a mild disease, we give IV IG in the dose of 2 grams per kg over a period of 2 to 3 days. Sometimes, if the coronary arteries are dilated on 2D echography, IVIG is mandatory, and other drugs which is given is enoxaparin 1 milligram per kg subcutaneously BD is a dose which is recommended. So when it is the child comes to you in a severe shock-like condition, hypotension, you may have to give a dopamine, dobutamine, or even noradrenaline drip for managing shock. IVIG is mandatory in severe disease, same dose 2 grams per kg, but the dose of the methylprednisolone in a severe disease is 10 to 30 milligram per kg per day, maximum 1 gram. And then you have to give aspirin along with this. Empirical antibiotics are also given in this severe disease. no response, if there is no response to this line of management, you can think of repeating one more dose of IVIG or giving tocilizumab in dose of 4 to 8 milligram per kg. So that's the management of multisystemic inflammatory syndrome. We are regularly seeing these patients in our OPD, but we need them to be managed in ICU setup. So we have managed many such patients these days, and we will be expecting many more in the coming days, because it is going to be a post-inflammatory syndrome. It is not seen during the acute infection, respiratory involvement, at no respiratory involvement at all in this MIS. So it's a hyperinflammation mainly because of the immune response of the child, which is seen after the coronavirus infection is over. So last part, I will take only 2 minutes. That is prevention of the coronavirus infection in a pediatric age group. So vaccination is not at all at present there for pediatric population. The vaccination is only recommended at present above the age of 18 years, because there are no trials done on the pediatric population up till now. Whatever the trials are done on adults, and once the vaccine is found to be safe in adults, the trials are going on in a pediatric population, and probably the vaccine is going to be available by the month of December for the pediatric population. But at present, we have to restrict the pediatric population on only social distancing. The masks are not required for the babies who are less than 2 years old, because they can become hypoxic without knowing anybody. So mask only after the age of 2 years. Of course, hand hygiene. And I will just elaborate about the 2 vaccines which are there at present in the market, which are likely to be available for also pediatric population. So the Covaxin is a vaccine which is entirely an indigenous vaccine, which is made by Bharat Biotech in the collaboration with the ICMR. So this is entirely made in India vaccine. It is a whole viron inactivated virocell vaccine. So remember, this is not a virus. This is inactivated like an influenza vaccine. The dose of the vaccine is 0.5 ml intramuscularly, 2 doses 4 weeks apart. It has shown antibody formation in 81% of the phase 3 trials. Efficacy doesn't mean the effectivity, but efficacy means the amount of antibody titer forms is in 81%. The most important part about this Covaxin is it is useful against the UK variant. The side effects are minor, only fever, but the fever may be reported for 2 or 3 days after the vaccination. The pain at the site of injection, headache, body pain, dizziness and giddiness, thrombosis is not reported after the Covaxin. The another vaccine which all of us have received is a Covishield vaccine by Serum Institute of India with collaboration with AstraZeneca. It is a vector-borne vaccine. Here, the chimpanzee adenovirus virus is used as a vector, and the viral DNA of the coronavirus is by the recombinant technology is introduced in this chimpanzee monkey vaccine. The dose is 0.5 ml intramuscular, 2 doses 4 weeks apart is given. There it is contraindication is a hypersensitivity, and none of the vaccine is recommended below the age of 18 years. Neither it is recommended in pregnancy and breastfeeding women, because the vaccine trials are not conducted on pregnant women and lactating mothers, but all current guidelines and all current journals recommend the vaccine even in pregnancy as well as to all lactating mothers. So if you say you can give the vaccine to your mother who is breastfeeding the baby, it's fair enough, because the current recommendations are to give vaccine to the lactating mother also. So I will just give you a brief summary of all the presentation. So in the second wave, pediatric population is more affected as compared to the first wave, and more amount of symptomatic patients are coming, as well as the complications are more. But still the children are doing much better as compared to adults. Adults still have much mortality as compared to the pediatric population. The decision to test the child or not is a individualized. Since the labs are already burdened, we try to avoid the testing. We consider the baby as a positive if whole family members are positive. Vast majority of the pediatric patients require only symptomatic care, no role of any azithromycin, doxycycline, favipiravir. Favipiravir as such is also indicated above the age of 18 years old, no role of ivermectin. Isolation should never be with the grandparents. It should be done only with the parents, unless and until the parents are severely ill or the parents are having comorbid conditions. The steroids have to be used in cautions, though they are very helpful in managing the severe disease. Try to avoid steroid in the first 7 days, because otherwise it will lead to viral replication. And awareness about multisystemic inflammatory syndrome associated with the COVID-19 is important, because all family physicians are going to see these very often in their day-to-day practice. So thank you for the patient hearing.
Amazing lecture, sir, as usual. It was a pleasure to hear you. As usual, your speech brought new insights from current research. खूप साऱ्या प्रश्नांची उत्तरं तुम्ही दिली आहेत, पण तरी अजून आहेच आहेत प्रश्न.
Yes, I will be more than happy to answer. No
Yes,
problem.
Should we start taking questions, sir?
Yes, no problem. I'll just stop sharing my screen.
Yes, sir. So first question is, when to do RT-PCR for COVID-19 in pediatric population?
So we have already said the RT-PCR should be done for all those who are COVID suspect, or if you have anybody in the family who is a COVID positive, you have to do it. If you do the RT-PCR in first 3 days after the onset of the symptoms, the chances of RT-PCR coming positive are very high. If you do it after the 7 days after the onset of the symptoms, the chances of RT-PCR coming positive is very less. So as far as possible, if you want to do it, you do it in the first 3 days or maximum in first 7 days, then only the sensitivity is more.
Yes, sir. So next question is, 10 years old child is COVID positive and there is only cough. What is the treatment?
So we have already said the child is COVID positive and he has only cough. So this we categorize it as a mildly symptomatic child. So mildly symptomatic child, no investigation. Only I will only give cough mixture and ask them to see me if they develop fever, if they develop rash, if their oxygen saturation is less than 94%, or if they develop vomiting or any other signs and symptoms suggestive that he is going to get a severe disease. So no investigation, no CT scan at all, only symptomatic management in form of antitussive or cough mixture.
Yes, sir. So next question is, if the patient is on home isolation for COVID, whether it is risky for other members in home?
Definitely, if the other members are negative, see, he is going to spread the infection to the others. So especially if the grandparents are there, or if anybody is having comorbid condition like hypertension, diabetes and all is there, they should be definitely, so the child has to be separated from them and the child should be isolated only with the parents who are either positive or negative. But there should not be any comorbidities and the parents themselves should not be seriously ill.
Yes, sir. Next question is, hemoglobin also decreases in COVID?
Hemoglobin sometimes decreases in the COVID as the iron level falls, because it's an inflammation ultimately. So any inflammatory condition, as you see, the ferritin is going to increase. So all the inflammation, iron deficiency is going to be there, and iron deficiency anemia. So we call it as an anemia of inflammation. So that is also going to be there.
Okay, this question you have answered, sir. Next question is, are ground glass opacity specific to corona only?
No, not at all. So the ground glass opacities which are at periphery, so they are at the peripheral lung fields are more suggestive of corona, but the ground glass opacities and whatever the scan findings can be seen in other viral infections also. So that's why the gold standard is not CT scan, the gold standard is RT-PCR.
Yes, sir. What levels of CRP are alarming?
See, any CRP that is more than 100, any CRP that is more than 100 is suggestive that the child is going to get a severe disease or the child is likely to have go into cytokine storm. So anything above 100 is definitely a problem.
Sir, should we do RT-PCR for all pediatric patients with URTI or loose motion or pain in abdomen?
Okay, so that's what I said. All this decision to test them is a individualized. Suppose the child comes to me on a day 1 of fever and he has got a upper respiratory tract infection, I will not do RT-PCR testing on day 1. Even if the child comes to me with just loose motions and mild fever, I will not do RT-PCR testing. So that is not mandatory, but because there is no specific treatment in the pediatric population for coronavirus, but if you want what is the diagnosis in that case, if the child runs fever for more than 4 days now or 5 days and he has a cough and cold, now you need to know what is the diagnosis, that is there any alternative diagnosis, then you do RT-PCR. RT-PCR comes positive, you are sure that this is COVID. Or if you have family members who need to be protected from the COVID, so if you come to know that this child is having COVID, you can separate them from the elderly members. So that is, so all this is a individualized. There are no specific guidelines for this thing. So it is your own decision to test or not.
So next question is, should recently turned 18
Sorry,
child
I couldn't. Sorry, can you repeat it again? Sorry.
So should recently turned 18. If a person completed 18 just now, a week ago, can take the vaccine?
He has completed 18 years.
Yes.
Yes, he can definitely take vaccine. He can definitely take. So Israel is the one country where they have introduced the vaccine in the age group of 12 to 18 because they have enough of trial in this age group. So they have also introduced, and now the trials are going on here, and we will be also getting few more vaccine like Sputnik vaccine and other vaccine by Zydus Cadila. So all these vaccine trial are going on in a pediatric age group, and soon, probably in the month of December, we will be getting the vaccine for pediatric population also.
Thank you, sir. So next question is, do you have any separate pediatric pulse oximeter?
Definitely, we have a separate pediatric because the children are so crying and they are so moving their fingers. So sometimes it takes 10 to 15 minutes to get a saturation. So we are tired by that time. And if you have a very busy OPD, it is very difficult to take a saturation. If the extremities are cold, again, it is very difficult to take the saturation. So there is definite a pediatric probe available. Neonatal probes and pediatric probes are also available, and they are available amply anywhere. So you can get these probes.
Yes, sir. Immunization in a newborn born to COVID mother. When to give BCG, OPV, and hepatitis B vaccine?
Routine schedules. Routine. So if the BCG is, even if the mother is positive, you give BCG at the time of birth. If you want to give OPV, you give OPV hepatitis B. If the mother is positive, you give DPT at a normal time, 6, 10, and 14 weeks. So no delay in schedule.
Yes, sir. So Dr. Sanjay Wagh is asking how to monitor SpO2 in pediatric patients as they are not cooperative.
That's what I just said. Sometimes you require a lot of patience to do it. They see in OPD, it really takes 10, 15 minutes to have a SpO2. So you require a lot of patience and a proper size probe.
Yes, sir. Sir, you said pharyngitis is common in children, but in this pandemic, it is difficult to examine the throat. So what can be done in such a scenario? What do you do in your clinical practice?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
एक minute.
What is common?
Pharyngitis is very common in
Yeah.
pediatric practice, and we are
Correct.
yes.
So,
So how you check in your OPD? We are not supposed to check the throat.
right. So pharyngitis is very common, and you have to check throat. You have to wear either N95 mask yourself or a face shield. So the initial instructions were not to see the throat, and you can use only N95 mask in your office practice. But now the current recommendation, since there is an airborne transmission, you have to use N95 mask as well as a face shield to prevent the infection occurring to you. You can see throat from at least distance, but you have to see. If you think that there is definitely likely other diagnosis, like suppose you are missing sometimes streptococcal pharyngitis, which is there with white membrane and also you need to see it.
Yes, sir. So next question you have answered, but the second part is, what is the reason that vaccine is not yet tried for pediatric age group?
Because it's the trial are not done. See, any vaccine is introduced in the market after phase 3 trials only. At present, all vaccine trials are done on a volunteers which are above the age of 18 years only. Now, once the vaccine is found to be very safe in this age group, the vaccine will be soon, means the trials will be done on the pediatric population, and then only the vaccine will be available.
Yes, sir. So next question is, does multisystemic syndrome in COVID happen in asymptomatic pediatric patient?
Yes, it can happen even in asymptomatic pediatric patient because it is a immune response. It is a hyperinflammatory immune response of the own cells to the COVID antigen. So even if the child never had a fever, the child never had a cough, we have seen many patients where there was no symptom at all and the child has come to with the COVID and his antibodies are strongly positive. So there was no COVID in past as such. They have escaped. Only the family members were positive and the child was never tested. He was positive or not positive, we don't know, but they were asymptomatic. So it can happen.
Sir, the next question is, can lactating mothers take vaccine?
Definitely. So that's what we said. Now the problem is this: if you go to any government center, you go to any PHC, the vaccine will not be given to lactating mothers because again, the trials are not done on lactating mothers and pregnant women. They are not done. But if you read Lancet, you read any current articles, you read any current journals, they all recommend vaccine to all the lactating mother because see, I have shown you one slide in which if the mother has COVID, mother is COVID positive, still we continue breastfeeding in them. So if we are giving breastfeeding to the COVID positive mother also, then why we can't give vaccine? Vaccine doesn't contain any virus.
Yes.
So we can give, it is only because the vaccine trials are not done on lactating mothers. But now current recommendation is to give the vaccine.
So Dr. Harshala, she is asking, this is in theoretical view. Last year it was told that pediatric group has less symptoms because their ACE receptors are not developed much. They become positive, but
Right.
disease doesn't develop. What has happened in this outbreak, in this second wave?
The thing is that the first thing in the previous episode, पहिल्या ज्याला एपिडेमिक आलं त्याच्या वेळेला बेबीज वगैरे सगळे काळजी घ्यायचे आणि मदर वगैरे पण त्यांना बाहेर पाठवायची नाही. पण आता डेफिनेटली देअर आउटडोर ऍक्टिव्हिटीज हॅव इन्क्रीज and second thing, because of the double mutation of the virus has become more virulent as well as the spreadability of the virus has increased. So it has become now airborne. So more number of kids are involved because of the airborne transmission, and the virulence of the virus has also increased. That's why the pediatric population is now more affected, along with more outdoor activities of the children as compared to the first wave.
So Dr. Kumar has given one suggestion is to see the throat is to ask mother to take photo on mobile of the throat.
Yeah, you
and
can
text
do
on
that.
WhatsApp.
Yes, you can do that. You can do that.
Yes. Sir, next question is Budecort inhaler justified in dry cough without bronchi or wheezing in COVID positive babies?
Okay, so this is a new update that the Budecort inhaler or any other steroid inhaler can be used in a pediatric population, especially if the child has got a respiratory symptom. But we personally, we try to avoid Budecort inhaler in first 5 days of the symptoms, basically because it's a steroid. It can promote the viral replication in the first 5 days. So in first 5 days of the symptoms, even if the child has got a cough and no marked wheezing, we try to avoid Budecort inhaler. But after 5 days, yes, Budecort inhaler is helpful in avoiding, or it helps in reducing the severity of the illness, and here it helps also in a recovery time, so shorter the duration of the illness. So it is recommended.
Thank you, sir. Next question is, after how many days from the onset of the symptoms can we expect MIS?
See that there is no, so various studies have shown the MIS can occur right from the beginning up to even 3 months or 4 months after the COVID has occurred. So even after 3 months, you are likely to get MIS up to 3 months.
Can we start oral steroids in mild to moderate cases in second week of the infection in children?
I said for mild, there is no role of steroid. We just treat symptomatically. For moderate, see, the decision is again individualized. If you are thinking mild, there is no role of steroid in mild. If you are thinking it is a moderate or severe, I will prefer to do first CRP and all inflammatory markers. So if there is an inflammation, if all the inflammatory markers are going high and the disease duration is more than 7 days, I will prefer to give steroids.
Yes, sir. So Dr. Madhu Oswal, she is asking, management of severe COVID and MIS is similar. Is the pathogenesis also same?
No. So the pathogenesis is different. In severe COVID, which is because of the virus itself, the damage occurs per se because of the virus. So all their pneumocystis, type 2 pneumocystis and ACE2 receptors are responsible for this. So it is a direct contact by the virus and direct damage. While in MIS, the pathophysiology, it's mainly a post-inflammatory. So it is a cytokines which are important, interleukins which are important. So they cause more damage. So it is a post-inflammatory. So it is whatever the immune response of the individual is a cause of MIS.
Yes, sir. Our obese pediatric
Mansi, just
yes.
sir, you have already answered 25 questions and still we can see 55 questions in the question box.
No problem.
So you let us know whenever you feel tired of answering.
No problem. You can just cut off the whatever
Yes, sir.
is been
Repeated.
covered. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Cut off whatever is been covered.
Yes, sir. Are obese pediatric patients at risk for MIS and cytokine storm?
Definitely not. Means obese patient, obesity is one of the risk factor for getting severe disease.
Yes,
So
sir.
both. So they can get a severe disease as well as MIS also.
Yes, sir. So how to differentiate between summer diarrhea and gastrointestinal disorders due to COVID-19? When patient presents with these complaints, how to start the treatment? Will racecadotril, prebiotic, probiotics help?
Yeah, so summer diarrhea most of the time is of a bacterial origin, and if you have very high fever along with abdominal pain along with bloody diarrhea, then you have to give an antibiotic. That's the there. Otherwise, you have to treat it as a viral diarrhea. So you treat it like any other viral diarrhea. Let it be rotavirus diarrhea or let it be a coronavirus diarrhea. It will not make difference because the treatment is going to same. So the treatment is ORS, zinc and probiotics. That's all. So if it is a bloody diarrhea, treat with antibiotics. If it is non-bloody diarrhea, treat with ORS, zinc and probiotics. So let it be corona or let it be any other viral diarrhea.
Sir, what care we take doctors for our own children because we are going for COVID duties?
Yes. So routine precaution that you will have to take, that everybody is taking the same precaution, that the hand hygiene is extremely important. You have to take wash before going home, sanitize your rooms properly. So social distancing, mask and same precautions that we are taking from the beginning of the epidemic.
Yes, sir. Next question is, what is the occurrence of other viral fevers during this second wave of COVID?
This is very difficult question. Basically, whatever the patients coming with the fever are more likely to be a coronavirus patient. Any fever or any presentation is possible with the coronavirus infection at present, but it is important to rule out clinically as well as by doing some tests to rule out that this is not dengue, this is not chikungunya, this is not any other fever. So this is also there, but almost all the infections are very low at present. Though they are not entirely disappear, they are very less at present. But any fever at present can be a COVID fever.
Yes, sir. So you have answered this 4-month baby COVID. Then role of Budecort MDI inhaler in first week of infection if patient has persistent cough and fever.
So that's what we have said. I will prefer to give budesonide inhaler only after 5 days. Because it can cause, it may aggravate the viral replication since it's a steroid. So we'll try to avoid, it's a big only cough and fever. We grade it as a mild disease only.
Yes, sir. So this investigation and treatment you have answered, sir. Which antitussive one should use?
So you can, if it is a dry cough, you can use either dextromethorphan.
Okay.
Most commonly used is a dextromethorphan, 0.5 milligram per kg per dose.
Okay. Sir, what are the indications for hospitalization in children?
So anything, so again it is the individual decision. All mild cases, asymptomatic cases should not be hospitalized, they should be monitored. All moderate cases can be hospitalized for observation, and of course all severe and critical cases need intensive care units only. So suppose a child comes to you with a moderate, that is saturation less than 94 is a indication for hospitalization. The child with the severe abdominal pain, vomiting, loose motion, it's also an indication for hospital. So all mild will not require hospitalization, but all moderate and severe will require hospitalization. Now all the mild diseases with comorbidities and immunocompromised conditions will also require hospitalization. So child with the leukemia, the child on a cancer chemotherapy with a mild disease will also require hospitalization.
So you have answered next 3 questions. The next question is, anything for prophylactic use in children?
Prophylaxis of what?
COVID.
Okay, prophylaxis of the COVID means whatever you give in adults, that is hydroxychloroquine, we don't give in a pediatric population.
Yes.
Hydroxychloroquine.
So next question is, if vaccination is successful, will it help to develop the herd immunity? Next part of the question is, and your expert opinion regarding third wave, which countries have seen serious diseases in children? Any updates you have?
Yes, so now what has happened is, now we are vaccinating, we have first started vaccinating above 65, now we have started vaccinating above 45, then we have started vaccinating from 18 to 45 years. So the only age group that is remained is less than 18 years. So they don't have any immunity against this. So they are the likely one to get more disease or more severe disease. So if you see the first wave which has occurred, most of the time it was the deaths which occurred were either with the comorbidities or those who are above the age of 50 years. In the second wave, you see the age of the distribution age of the affection has gone down. Most of the youngsters are becoming serious, they are becoming hypoxic, they're requiring ventilation, and few of them are dying within a few days. So this is the shifting of the age which has occurred from elderly now to the youngsters, and now it may happen that in a third wave, the pediatric population is likely to be because they are not having, means their vaccination may not be done till that time.
Yes, sir. Next question is, both parents are positive and child is negative, how to isolate the child?
No, both the parents are positive and the child is negative, but you have to consider this child as a positive only because the RT-PCR has got a sensitivity of only 60%. Means their mother and father both are positive, but they must have come in contact 2 to 3 days prior. They have come positive. So already this child is considered as positive, and the child has to be isolated with parents only and not with the grandparents.
Yes, sir. Sir, next question is, how many COVID positive children require ventilator and what is the death rate on ventilator?
Less than 2% or less than even 1% require ventilation. Less than 1%. So critically ill children are almost 1%, and the death rate you see it's less than 0.5.
Yes, sir. Sir, next question is, children affected last year, what is the possibility of reinfection with the COVID and what will be the severity?
Yeah. So the reinfection really can occur, and definition of reinfection. See, suppose you do a COVID test today of a child and it comes positive, and you do after 1 month, it is going to be positive. You do after 2 months, it is going to be a positive. So the period that is kept is a 3 months. So 3 months it can come positive with the same infection. So, but if the child gets COVID last year and this year again the PCR is positive, that indicate the child has got a reinfection. And this reinfection is possible because of the mutation of the virus. So the currently circulating strain in the Maharashtra is a double mutant virus. So this double mutant virus can reinfect the children. So that is there. So reinfection is possible, but we still don't know whether the child are going to get a severe infection or not, because the previous antibodies are definitely going to help him, which are there. So probably he may not require hospitalization due to severe disease.
Sir, what about nebulization in OPD for non-COVID pediatric patient during this pandemic?
We try to avoid, we have shut down all the nebulization in our office practice. We have stopped nebulization in office practice unless and until it is absolutely must.
Yes, sir.
Unless and until it is absolutely must, we ask them to buy their own kit and then give nebulization.
Yes, sir.
So no cross infection should occur.
Sir, is it necessary to have a 15 years trial for vaccine to come into market?
Sorry?
15-year trial is required to come for a vaccine to come into market.
Yeah, absolutely correct. So most of the vaccine, if you see how they are manufactured and then done, they undergo various trials. That is phase 1 trial runs for a longer time, then phase 2 trial, then phase 3 trial, then animal trial initially. So this takes a longer time for the vaccine. But since this is a pandemic and this is a real emergency, all this period is very curtailed and made it very short. So this is absolutely fair enough to have a vaccine within a span of 6 months. This is a real emergency, so it's okay, no problem. But otherwise, if you see a non-emergency vaccine like chickenpox and all, they require 15, not only 15, 20 years trials have been done before that. They are introduced into the market.
Yes, sir. So next question is, does blood sugar need to be measured in pediatric COVID?
Not at all. Means for normal pediatric population, you don't have to measure any blood sugar level for mild, moderate, or even severe cases. But it has been observed that those children who have recovered from COVID infection, few of them are presenting with diabetes mellitus. So we need to find out whether the COVID has caused this diabetes mellitus or not. So this has happened we are seeing a lot of patients coming to in the diabetic ketoacidosis and getting admitted in ICU and who are COVID positive.
Yes, sir. So Dr. Reshma, she has presented a case actually.
Yeah.
Sir, it's a very long question. 8 years old boy having stomatitis.
Sorry,
red
how many
tongue-
years? How many
8
years?
years. 8
8
years.
years. Okay, okay.
Old boy having stomatitis, red tongue mucosa and red spots on palate. No fever, no any other symptoms. His mom was positive 25 days back, recovered from COVID. The boy also had fever, red eye before 25 days and received antiviral and antihistamines and antipyretic 25 days back. Sir, what will be the reason for this stomatitis and how to approach this case?
Okay, so this stomatitis can be just a viral stomatitis. So it may happen with just coronavirus infection. It may occur with the enterovirus infection or any other viral infection, routine stomatitis. But if the child also has got a cracked lips or other, then whatever we have said just now, that is you have to monitor for multisystemic inflammatory syndrome. The fever may develop later on in such conditions. So you need to monitor them for fever and you can do one CRP to find out whether it is going toward that. So that is, but most of the time, if the fever is not there, this will turn out to be a simple viral infection and you may just have to give just a multivitamin. That's all.
Yes, sir. Sir, next question is immunization in recently COVID positive but recovered pediatric patient is indicated or not?
Yeah, so if the child has recovered from COVID-19 infection and he is due for immunization, that immunization can be done 14 days after. So that is the quarantine period. So after 14 days, you can do whatever the immunization is there. Coronavirus immunization is not there for pediatric population. So if he is due for his chickenpox, he can take out the chickenpox after 14 days are over.
Yes, sir. Few more questions, sir.
Yeah, no problem.
Can giving influenza vaccine protect children from COVID infection?
So see, when this epidemic was started, many of them were thinking that the MMR vaccine, you give a MMR vaccine, you give BCG vaccine and you are protected. So some antibodies are still there which cross-react with it. If MMR, BCG or influenza is going to protect against coronavirus, why we need coronavirus vaccine?
Yes.
So there is some protection which is there, but this will not help you in the long term. So like MMR, BCG, influenza, they may give you some cross antibody protection, but that is not a foolproof of it. That's why you need a coronavirus vaccine.
Yes, sir. So next question is why MIS is seen only in children?
Yeah, it's because of their immune response, abnormal immune response, which is there.
Yes, sir. Monoclonal antibodies are useful in pediatrics or not?
Yeah, they are useful only in severe diseases. So monoclonal antibodies are being tried in very severe ARDS like picture diseases or very severe cytokine storm wherever is there. But they are at present very expensive.
Yes, sir. How much are the chances of coagulopathy in children? And D-dimer test should be advised to each positive child like an adult.
No, that's what we have said. No test is required for asymptomatic and mild children. But if the child has got a severe disease, yes, D-dimer is definitely needed. And those who are having D-dimer over 1000, we do give antithrombotic therapy in them as a prophylaxis.
Yes, sir. Are there studies which indicate that the mutant virus is more virulent?
Yes, definitely. Because the population which is affected is showing much fast deterioration. They are more severely affected. ARDS is developing much rapidly and deaths are occurring in much younger population. So this definitely indicate that the virus is more virulent as compared to the previous strain.
Yes, sir. So next question is, thrombotic events are seen in adult COVID. Do we see any such cases in children?
Yes, thrombotic elements are commonly seen in adults. They come in the form of stroke or any other thromboembolism in form of pulmonary embolism, or you may show sometimes gangrenes of the lower limbs. But even in a pediatric age group nowadays, we are seeing thromboembolic phenomena in form of either strokes or gangrene of the lower limb has been reported, or severe ischemia and thrombosis in a femoral artery has been reported.
Yes, sir. Sir, there was an article saying to avoid use of dextromethorphan. Your opinion, sir?
See, dextromethorphan sometimes what if you are giving in an overdose can act as a respiratory suppression. So it can cause depression. So that's why it has to be given in a proper dose. Otherwise, there is no contraindication.
Yes, sir. Lancet magazine says that it is airborne. If it is so, then whether mask will be useful since size and specific gravity of COVID virus is very, very low.
Yeah, so that's what we are saying. Previously it was a droplet infection. So once the droplet infection, we say the droplet infection, the size of the virus particle is more than 5 microns. When the size of the viral particle or organism particle is less than 5 microns, in that case you have to take all the standard precautions for airborne transmission. So here your 6 feet may not work. 6 feet distancing may not work. Here you have to wear N95 mask only, or
Yes,
double
sir.
mask.
Yes, sir. Have you seen mucormycosis in children?
No, I have seen mucormycosis in children, but not related to COVID. We are seeing routinely mucormycosis which are reported and aspergillosis in our hemato-oncology unit, where the child is severely immunosuppressed, and we are getting mucormycosis of orbit, we are giving mucormycosis of brain, as well as sinusitis occurring, hard palate getting involved in mucormycosis, but they are commonly seen in immunocompromised children. In adults nowadays, they are commonly seen, especially in a diabetic individual. So those who are receiving very high dose of the methylprednisolone, they are all, of course, immunosuppressed, and along with, if they are diabetic, there is a high chance of having mucormycosis in them. So the drug of choice for all practical purpose in them is amphotericin B, which we are giving even in our hemato-oncology unit.
Yes, sir. Sir, your expert opinion about school reopening.
The school has to be started, but seeing the current scenario and the present spread of the virus by airborne transmission, and since pediatric population cannot take enough precautions, they are unable to wear the mask properly, they are not able to maintain the distance, it is better to avoid the schools at present.
Yes, sir. Sir, which are the thrombolytic agents of choice of severe COVID pediatric treatment?
We give low molecular weight heparin, Clexane.
Yes, sir. For children on inhaler, corticosteroids for asthma, what is the treatment in COVID regarding the use of steroids in initial period of the disease?
Now we continue in that. If they are already on steroids, that is budesonide or any other, then we continue that. We don't stop them because their body is used to them.
Yes, sir, you have answered most of the question. Last question is, sir, you told MISC can develop up to 3 months after COVID-19. Then
Right.
Can we take a call on vaccination and at what time?
Which vaccine?
COVID vaccine.
No, but the COVID vaccine is not recommended for pediatric age group.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Is nasal spray effective?
nasal spray means which steroid nasal spray or vaccine nasal spray?
So she has asked only nasal spray. Is nasal
Because
spray?
their nasal spray may be either steroidal nasal spray or maybe now few vaccine, that is coronavirus vaccine, will be also available in form of a nasal spray within few months.
Yes. How many days we should keep isolation to suspected children?
Same 14 days.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So this is the last question. And sir, N95 mask very difficult to wear for 2 hours also. So how can you?
No, now there is no excuse for this. You have to make habituation to yourself. There is no excuse. We are wearing in our OPD for 6 hours. So we have, initially we also found trouble, but now you don't have any excuse. You have to make used to it.
Yes, sir. So now this is the last question. Psychosocial impact of COVID situation in children. How
Yeah.
to deal with it, sir?
Yeah, definitely. We have not touched that topic, but we are finding lot of pediatric population, especially adolescents, are coming with lot of anxiety and depression in our OPD. So since it is not not directly related to corona, we have not touched that topic. But many of the adolescent people are coming with depression, anxiety, conversional reactions, all are there.
Yes, sir. Sir, thank you for your patiently answering each and every question. Now I will hand over the charge to Dr. Prakash, sir. Prakash, sir, are you there?
Yes, yes, I am. Yes, right. Thank you very much, sir. As Mansi said, it was an amazing lecture as usual. But I would like to add that it was not only amazing, it was very informative, crisp, and well delivered. And thank you very, very much for your marathon question and answer session.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mahajan sir.
Yes, sir. And on behalf of MCF, I would like to extend my very hearty vote of thanks to Dr. Sanjay Margar. And my hearty vote of thanks also goes to PTA, Pune Doctors Association, Dr. Sambhaji Mangde, Dr. Jagdish Bang, Dr. Sarang Mande, Dr. Neeraj Jadhav, and all the others. And a big thank you to Dr. Mansi Pahade, who was especially instrumental in organizing this particular CME. And finally, but not none the least, Mr. Ganesh Ram from Whitecoat for giving us this Zoom platform. Thank you very much, everybody. It was really a nice session. Thank you.
Also, sir. Really a precise guidance on a significant topic. Once again, sir, thank you. Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks to Mukta Foundation also for collaborating with us. And again, sir, thanks for a wonderful lecture and eye-opening messages, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you to the PDA also. Thank you.
मानकर सर, आमचे 250 डॉक्टरांचे 1-2-3 ग्रुप्स आहेत. आम्ही वेगवेगळे कोर्सेस रन करतो मुक्ता चॅरिटेबल फाउंडेशन. तर त्याच्यामध्ये आम्ही मागच्या वर्षी कोविडसाठी डॉक्टरांसाठी 9 दिवसाचा ट्रेनिंग कोर्स घेतला होता. तर तो आमचा ग्रुप आहे. आणि आता आम्ही अर्जन्सी इन मेडिसिन म्हणून अजून एक आमचा कोर्स सुरू केलेला आहे. तो पण आमचे ग्रुप्स आहेत. तर त्या सगळ्यांचा डिमांड होता की पेडियाट्रिक्सवर सर तुम्हीच बोलायचं. आणि ते लोक सगळे खूप मागे लागले होते. त्यामुळे मी पण तुमच्या मागे लागले होते की सर तुम्हाला तुमच्याकडे घरात तेवढ्या अडचणी असल्या तरी तुम्ही आमच्याकडे या आणि लेक्चर घ्या. सो थँक्यू व्हेरी मच सर.
Thank you, Mansi madam. Thank you.
Mansi, I'd like to
Yes, sir.
a line or two about Mukta Charitable Foundation. We are working in education field and the social field. For last helpline also, Sambhav HIV helpline. And in education field, we educate doctors. We have been doing that for in HIV, in education, and also teaching colleges also and lay people. Yes. So for your information, I just wanted to inform you about this.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Have a nice evening, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
again.
thank you. Thanks to all of you
Yes.
for the patient hearing also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.